Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial. So in this tutorial we'll be looking at fetching data from an API. So the API we'll be using in this tutorial will be from weatherstack.com. So you can come over here, you can start using the API by signing up and creating an account. And once you create an account, you should be redirected to your dashboard. Now the first thing you'll notice when you're on your dashboard is that you have an API access key. And this key is essentially what we're going to use to make our API request. So over here you can see that we have a 3-step quick start guide. And we see an API access key over here. And then over here you see that we have a sample API request. Now the first thing you realize is that this is in a form of a URL. So let me click on this and see what I get. So for those of you who know what JSON is, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. You realize that the website will be redirected to return.json data. So if you look at this JSON data, for example, if you come over here, you can see that you can get weather descriptions, you can see wind speed, and if you look closely, I'm sure that there's temperature over here. You can see temperature over here. So in Python, JSON data is analyzed in the form of dictionaries, which means that we can actually use Python to extract data from this API request. So let's dive straight into it. So the first thing you need to do to follow along with this tutorial is to pip install requests. Make sure you add an S. So I have already installed it, but if you have not installed it, it might take a little bit more time than it did. So next we're going to import the request module. We're going to import the request module. Then we're going to import JSON. So this is the JSON module. I believe that this already comes with the default Python package. So the next thing we're going to create is our URL. So over here we can see a sample API request to get the current weather. So I'm just going to copy this and we're going to modify it a little bit. So I'm just going to put this inside of an F string, and I'm going to use a 3-pair quotation mark so that I do not have to put it in the same line. So first thing you realize is when you look at this, that this is the base URL. So this doesn't change. And the next thing you realize is that this is a key value pair. So the key here is your access key and the value is this parameter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this and replace it with our API key. So I'm just going to copy our API key and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a variable for API. Now it's always a good idea to keep variables in capital letter when you know they will not be changing for the duration of the program. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable for city, and it's going to be an input variable. So I'm just going to be like enter the city to find the weather. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to go to the next line. So I'm going to use the format string and I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to go with API and I'm going to replace New York over here with city. And you know what? I'm just going to make sure I keep this on the same line. I'm going to modify it a little bit. And we are done. So now I'm going to create a variable called R, and now this is where we're going to be using our request module. So we're going to go request.get, and the next thing we're going to go is URL. Now pay close attention. So I'm just going to print URL, and before I print URL, I want you to know what the different type of request status codes are. So the first request status code I'll be talking about is request 200. So request 200 actually means your API request was successful. If you get something like 404, it means that it is forbidden. I'm sure that there are some times where you've gone to a website and you've seen something like 403 stands for forbidden, while 404 stands for not found. So in other words, anything apart from 200, sometimes you might have 201, but anything apart from 200 and maybe 201, it means that your API request was not successful. So I'm just going to run our code. So I'm just going to enter a city. I'm going to enter Edmonton. And you see that we get request 200. And this means that our request was successful. I don't like the lack of space in here. So I'm just going to add a column. And yeah, that's it. So our API request was successful. So the next thing we're going to go is access. So we're just going to extract JSON data from the request file. So over here we get r.json, and if I decide to print access, I'm just going to run our code one more time. I'm just going to go with Edmonton over here. You see we get JSON data, and I talked about JSON earlier in the course. Right now I'm going to go over to the documentation of this file. Please note that the JSON data you get from different APIs vary a little bit. So if I open VS Code, you see that the JSON file you're going to get here is very similar to this, but this is more organized. So we're going to look at this. So first thing you realize is that this is essentially a dictionary, and within these dictionaries, the keys, which like request, location, current, these are all keys. All these keys are dictionaries themselves. So we have nested dictionaries over here. So now let's take a look at this. The two things we want to extract. We want to extract the weather descriptions, and we also want to extract the temperature. So essentially this is the data we're going to be extracting from this file. So now let's take a look at this. So if we come over here, you see that we have current. Current is also a key. So we're going to index current, and then inside current, we're also going to index temperature. So temperature is a key within the dictionary current, and current is also a key within the entire dictionary. So all we need to do to extract temperature is go with current and go with temperature. And then we're just going to index it like we're indexing a dictionary. And next, we want to extract weather descriptions. So it gets a little bit tricky over here. So it's similar, just that the ending part of this is a little bit different. So now we are going to go to current, and the next we come over here to weather descriptions. And now pay close attention, because of the square brackets over here, this is a list. So which means when we are indexing this, we can't index this with keys, we have to index it with numbers, and the first number in Python is 0. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to get rid of our last statement. And first, we're going to find temperature. So temperature is going to be equal to access. Now, take a close look at this again. You see that within our dictionary, we have another key called current. So I'm just going to index current. And within current, this is a nested dictionary. So within current, we're going to index temperature. Now, next, we're going to get weather description. So I'm just going to create a variable called weather. And this is going to be similar to this one, just that there's a slight difference at the end. So we're going to go with current. As you can see here, weather descriptions is cut apart. As you can see over here, weather description is inside current. So next we're going to go with weather descriptions, and finally we're going to go to 0 because of the list. So take a good look at this. You see weather descriptions, and you see a list over here, and to extract this data you have to go with 0. So essentially we're done. So I'm just going to create a return value, and this is what I'm going to go. It's going to have its own f string. So I'm going to go with city has a temperature of Then I'm going to go with a variable temperature, and the weather is, and I'm going to go with a variable weather. And finally, we're just going to print return value, and that should be it. So let's run our code. So I'm going to go with Edmonton again, and you see that Edmonton has a weather of 14 and the weather is clear as of the time of making this video. And we can actually use other cities. I'm just going to go with Lagos, and you can see that Lagos has a temperature of 31, and you can see that the weather is partly cloudy. So that's been it for this video. Thank you for your time.